You have people that are hypocrites, and that's why the hadith about Dhu Wajhain are because they're basically hypocrites. And obviously the Prophet ﷺ had these people were in Medina, and they would go listen to the Sahaba and they'd say, "Nahnu ma'akum," and then when they would go to the Quraysh or to the Jews, they would say, "No, no, we're really with you, we're not with them." And so these are two-faced people. It's interesting that the Arabs use the same word that we have in English. I'm sure the Turks have the same, because this is a universal type of character. You find them in every culture, two-faced people. And then you have what are called the ma'ma'iyun, and these are just people that are, they're just non-confrontational type people, and they just ana ma'ak. So they're not really so much two-faced, they're multifaceted, because they're pretty much, they don't have enough spine to take positions on anything, so they just go along with everybody. And the Prophet ﷺ warned about being from these type of people. And Imam Malik also said, you know, if you're with people, just be silent unless there's a reason to speak. So, but there's always, and we know in group dynamics, social psychology, there's been a lot of studies that people will go along with a group. You know, the man in South Africa they interviewed him about, I think reaching 105. And the interviewer said, you know, is there any perks in reaching 105? And he said, no more peer pressure. So obviously there's a lot of, you know, young people are particularly susceptible to this, because especially at school, you get into group and herd mentality. And there's an element to humanity that we are herd creatures, like other herds, creatures. There aren't that many species that Allah has made that don't gather in groups. And humans are one of them. And herd mentality is a type of mentality. The Quran in some ways could be read, from one perspective, could be read as a book of individuals going up against groupthink. Because you will find almost all of the people that are on the truth in the Quran are individuals, and they're always going up against a group of people that have gone astray. And so it's a very interesting aspect to the Quranic narrative. And that's why what's sad is the danger of Islam becoming a groupthink, where, for instance, one of the things Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayy said about the revolutions is he said that in these revolutions, the mi'yar, the standard, becomes the revolution and not the truth. So once a revolution starts, you're either a revolutionary or you're a counter-revolutionary. There's no more debate, because it's a fitna. And so suddenly nobody can speak openly without getting their head crushed, right? And this is what happened in France with the Reign of Terror. Robespierre comes along, and suddenly all the counter-revolutionaries, anybody that criticizes the revolution, has to go, including some of the people that started it, like Marat, right? He had him assassinated, even though his pen was one of the great instigators of the revolutionary fervor in France. So that's what happens, is that the revolution becomes the mi'yar, and people fall into that herd mentality, and suddenly a scholar can't even speak. They might have a different perspective. One of the things Confucius said in his Analects is that when everybody says this is good, that is bad. When everyone says this is good, that is bad. And that's one of the blessings of our tradition, is there always has been dissenting voices in everything. Because if you squelch dissent, if you get rid of dissent, you don't allow for the possibility of alternative perspectives that are often very important. And this is something really, really important, because the principled people have principles. And sometimes they don't compromise those principles in certain situations when everybody else thinks you should compromise them. Now, they could be right or wrong in that given situation, but people are entitled to their opinions in that way if their opinions based on sound criteria. And that's why we have methodologies. Like we have a tradition. In our ethics, we have a ethical tradition of reasoning. And so you can arrive at different ethical conclusions. But if the reasoning is sound, because not every situation has one clear answer. If the situation is sound, if the reasoning is sound, we can arrive at two different conclusions. I have to acknowledge yours and you should acknowledge mine. But if the reasoning is not sound, and that can be pointed out, then that's a different matter. Then it becomes mu'anid, somebody who's obstinate and refuses to budge on that. So basically that's what he's warning us about, being these people that just go and you're with these people, I'm with you, and then you're with these people, I'm with you, and you don't take positions. And he says if you're doing it to get secrets from them, like spies do this, and spies will infiltrate groups, and we have agent provocateurs. In the United States, we had almost all the cases of people that were tried in these terrorist cases were actually people that were on the internet, and somebody would contact them because they might have some radical writings, but they weren't doing anything other than just voicing some radical opinions. But then they would send in these undercover people, and they would actually say, oh, let's go do this or let's go do that. And then these people would go along with it, and suddenly, you know, they've got their phony bomb strapped to their vest and they're going down to blow something up, and then the sting comes in and they find out that the guy that was with them was working for them all along. And that was an entrapment situation. Now, obviously, I mean, what the person was doing was wrong irrespective, but would have he done that thing had they never contacted him and gotten him to do that? I mean, the idea is a preemptive, this is called preemptive police work, which is a very strange way to go, because traditionally that is not how Western police work was designed. It was not designed to be preemptive. So, but obviously terrorism is, it's not a new problem, but it certainly has some new manifestations that have become much more dangerous than previous situations in the past. So next one.
If, on the other hand, he desired to rectify the split between the two parties, and intentions are the elixir that rectifies actions, then his deed is most excellent. As for one who is simply courteous to each group and sincere in that, then he is not to be considered among the two-faced people.
Right, good. So what he's saying is elixir is, in elixir, it's taken from the Arabic elixir. Elixir is the thing that transmutes a base metal into a precious metal. And so he's using an alchemical metaphor where somebody's acting as an elixir to take a bad situation and turn it into a good situation. He said if that's their intention, that's not a bad thing. So he goes to two groups, and he's with this group and he's with that group, but he's really trying to rectify between the two groups. So that's very different from... Now also, mujamalat. Amma idha jamala kullan minhuma. So mujamalat are tricky because you can fall into a type of hypocrisy also, but there's courtesies and decorum. In certain situations, you'll find yourself in a situation where you might not agree with the situation, but you know there's a difference of opinion about it. And so because of the unique situation that you find yourself in, you might tend to not do anything and be with the people and do what are called mujamalat. Now that can get you into trouble as well. So you could be in a gathering, for instance, and you might not agree with what's going on in the gathering, or other people might think it's a bad thing, but you found yourself in it for whatever reasons, and then you just do your best to make the best of a difficult situation. Those situations do arise in life, and the Arabs say, دارهم ما دمت في دارهم وارضيهم ما دمت في أرضيهم وحييهم ما دمت في حييهم. You know, like mudarat, the difference between mudarat, mudarat are where you're not compromising your principles. So it's not nifaq, because there's a very different between mudahanat. وَدُّوا لَوْ تُدْهِنُوا فَيُدْهِنُونَ. They want you to go along with them. I'm okay, you're okay type situation when they're not okay. That's a very different situation from mudarat. Mudarat is where you just have you're courteous with people and you treat them, and especially if you're in their land. وَارْضِهِمْ مَا دُمْتَ فِي أَرْضِهِمْ. If you're in somebody's land, you're a guest, and you don't want to be a rude guest. So, and when in Rome, do as the Romans do, with the caveat, as long as they're not doing something haram, because the Romans did a lot of haram things. But if they were just doing something that was from their culture or tradition, then you can go along with it. That's all he's saying, that's not being dhu wajhain. It's basically just being polite and being a gentleman.